a lot of differing ideas about this. Anybody want to share? What do they think?
Yeah.
Do you think it would have a rejuvenating, anti-aging effect, so to eliminate wrinkles? Or help get rid of wrinkles in the aging process? And why? If so, if that's yes, why? How? It's okay, just take, doesn't matter, just take a guess. Someone take a guess. Yes, Andre.
Well, in our group, one of the ideas was that we think it doesn't work because based on the anatomy of the skin, especially in the top layer, the epidermis, on the apical side, there's a lot of dead skins that's already being shed off every hour, every day, that you said. So like if when you apply it on, it's just not going to be absorbed. It's just sitting there and it's going to like fall.
Okay. Yes, did you want to add to that?
No.
That's it? That's good? Okay, you guys are all working together? All right, you guys hear that? Does that make sense? So he was saying basically this group said because the apical layer is basically dead packed cells. And what's in those dead packed cells? Right? Very strong, kind of waterproofing, tough, intermediate fiber packed in those cells. Because of the nature of those cells all packed together and dying and sawing off, that it's hard to get anything in there, right? Past that. How many layers is this, by the way? If we look at the epidermis, 20 to 30 in the very top, right? What was that top layer of the epidermis called? The horny layer? Stratum corneum. Good. So that's stratum corneum. That's 20, 30 layers. All the rest is multiple, dozens of layers below that. So depending on where you're at, thin or thick skin, it could be hundreds of layers thick, right? Okay, so the thickness of that and the anatomy of that layer, that's good. Okay, perfect. What else? There are a lot of different components to this that you can sort of rationalize in different ways, take apart. What else? What'd you guys come up with back here? Or back there? What'd you think? Yes or no? Anti-aging, rejuvenating?
We said
Yes.
no because
No.
we just pretty much said the same thing, that the skin was too big for it to absorb and it would just stay on top.
Okay. So it wouldn't really penetrate.
Yeah.
Okay. No penetration into skin. Okay. Now let's, anybody else talk about anything else? Because I heard you guys over here saying something about proteins or fibers or collagen, something over here. Yes? What did you guys say?
So collagen fibers are the strongest and they resist tension. So we were thinking that since there's collagen in it, like it would just go over the skin and like appear to be like smooth hair, but not.
So that's, did you guys hear that? Basically the collagen fibers, remember these are the biggest, the thickest and longest of the 3 different types of fiber types that we were talking about. Collagen, elastin, and reticular fibers. And you're exactly right, Janelle. The collagen fibers are huge. These are big polymers of protein, right? So they're individual little protein subunits are all covalently bonded together. How are you going to get those big giant rods of protein through the surface layers of the stratum corneum, through the rest of the epidermis, and then down into the dermis, where wrinkles are actually happening, right? And grooves are actually happening in the dermis. So that's really good. That's a good point as well. I will ask, did anybody else have anything different? Do you guys are in the back? Eddie? No? Stuff? Same thing? Similar? All right. What about this little fact right here? I sort of squeaked this in. This is a scenario that happened to me in an airport. I was in an airport and they had like products and little things at this kiosk, and they sold this product to me. They said, "Come here, stop for a second." You know how they do that? They stop you. I'm gonna make you beautiful. Hold on. Start putting in stuff. Let me just try this. Like, how does it feel? I'm like, okay, whatever. Then they give me this little spiel about this. And boy, was I the wrong person to do that spiel to. Okay, let me ask you for a second. You know about the skin? You know about the anatomy and physiology of the skin? And they went, yes, the skin is multiple layers. It's dying on the outside. You knew the very, very basics. But then they started saying things like collagen fibers. Did you know how big those are? I think I told them exactly how big they were. And then I said stem cells. Okay, so this other element, we talked a little bit about stem cells in here, and regeneration of tissues. We'll talk more about it. Stem cells in a cream, in a jar. And by the way, I gave him a hard time because this was a $500 cream. And he told me I needed it. So I was like, okay, you're have a lesson in basic anatomy, my friend. And he was like, oh, okay. So by the end, he's totally like, okay, have a good day. And, okay, and that was it. The sale was over, kaput, done, right? So I said, stem cells, okay, so these are living, breathing, metabolizing cells. They're in that cold jar of a cream that's made of collagen and polymers and all kinds of other ingredients, 70 different ingredients on there. They're going to be alive. Those cells are going to be alive. We have to incubate them. They have to be in culture. They have to be cared for in a very particular way, in the body or in the dish. So yeah, it was fun. I got to give a little biology lecture, and then say, just make sure you have your facts straight when you're trying to tell people they need this cream because they look tired or whatever it is, or they're aging. I was like, oh, son, we're about to have a lesson. So basically you all agreed with exactly what I said, right? Exactly, those are the points and things that I wanted you to apply, sort of what do collagen fibers look like? What does the skin look like? What is its basic anatomy? Stem cells, those are alive, right? Even if they're little factors from stem cells, all those things break down. You have to treat them in a very specific way. They have to be body temperature, they have to have sugar and ions to keep them alive. Now I will say, there is something to be said for moisturizers and creams, right? And things that basically add protein and add moisture to the surface layers of the skin, because that does help prevent the loss of moisture, right, and drying out, desiccating, we say, right, and slowing down that process of breaking down collagen fibers and the cells not regenerating as fast. It helps to keep in the moisture and sort of anti-aging in some way. But can you just put collagen fibers and stem cells and all these big giant factors through the epidermis of the skin and into the dermis where these lines are developing? No, you cannot, right? Okay, so that was a lot of these little application questions. We'll do like real life scenarios. These are things that really happen. Sometimes they're fun, sometimes they're not. All right, so the appendages of the skin, and this is kind of an interesting area. I always get weird questions about this one. Hair and nails and sweat glands and oil glands. And these are interesting because they have a lot of clinical implications and just interesting real life applications. What are these? Now you looked at this, McKenna took this picture last year. When you looked at this under the microscope, you should be able to identify what are these two structures right here. There's a good representative right here. Yes, that's right. Hair shaft is kind of staining in yellow, it looks kind of gold. What is this whole big base down right there? Follicle, that's right. This is the hair follicle where the cells are actually regenerating and producing the actual hair shaft, and then the hair shaft is growing out. So here's the epidermis, here's the thick layer of the dermis, and these are two little adjacent hair follicles. You actually looked at a slide very similar to this, or this exact slide, in lab. Okay, the hairy mammal slide. Okay, so just real briefly, I want you to understand just the basic anatomy of the nail. It's made of hard keratin. Again, this tough, resilient protein we find in skin, epidermis, we find in hair, and we find in nails. Okay? So it has keratin. The parts are the free edge of the nail, the body of the nail, the root of the nail, and then the little nail folds. So on the finger, on the digit, the little fold of tissue, a finger around it. And then the cuticle or the eponychium. If you want to be fancy, you can say, ooh, my eponychium. I have to trim, push back my eponychium. People will say, what are you talking about? That's the cuticle of the nail. So those are appendages that come out from the fingers and the toes. This is really what it looks like. Here's the cuticle, so this little bed, the nail body, the free edge. And there's a little lunule. It looks like a sort of moon. Lune in Latin means crescent or moon, right? Lunar, a little sort of moon. This is where the rejuvenating cells are being produced and packed with keratin to provide the whole length of the nail. Now you know even underneath here there's a nail matrix and there's blood vessels and nerves immediately below the body and the bed of the nail. If you've ever bent back your nail, have you done that? Okay, even worse, have you ever this is terrible, shaving? Okay, and I was doing it real quick, as I have to do, if I do it at all. Okay, sad but true. Okay, so I'm shaving like this and my thumb was sort of sticking out, and as I shaved I hit up and the razor went straight through my entire nail. So it went down into the nail bed and the actual root of the nail, sliced in half. and it really bled. It's highly vascularized and innervated, so it's very sensitive, right? We can use these for dexterity, scratching, grabbing, digging, right? As human beings, we use them. But when you hurt them or they get bent back or cut, it really, really hurt. And actually, in the fingers themselves, here's this whole layer of adipose, right? And the bone of the actual digit. But surrounding this, there are sensory receptors in the dermis of the skin, especially concentrated in your fingers. The highest numbers of sensory receptors in some of the places in your body are your lips, your tongue, and your fingers, the dermis of your skin. Because we're highly sensitive, tactile, dexterous creatures, right? So yes, when you cut fingers or you hurt nails, it's really, really painful. Okay, that's all I have to say about nails. Appendages of the skin, know the basic parts, and that they are made of keratin. They're packed with keratin. All right, so if we go into hair, this is a flexible strand. One hair is a flexible strand of dead keratinized cells. So the hair itself, the shaft, is dead. The cells at the bottom inside the papilla, in the base of the follicle, are regenerating and dividing. And then they die, they're packed with keratin, and they're packed into this actual shaft. And it also has hard keratin, tough and durable. Okay, so the main parts of the hair are the root and the shaft. The root is embedded in the skin, okay, down into the dermis, and the shaft is what you can see above the epidermis coming out. And actually, all of us have little hairs all over our whole bodies, right? We have certain terminal hairs in places, but we also have little vellus hairs all over the body in different locations, right? Okay, so this is kind of funny, because my kids have crazy hair. Like, we're known in our family, they wake up, even when I just took a ponytail out, and create hair just all over the place. So, lots of crazy hair. This is actually my son, Pee-wee. I've talked about him before. This is Lola. He had really, really long hair, and everybody used to think he was a girl. So finally, I didn't want to do it. I think I cried when he actually did it. But he cut his hair. He went from long, gorgeous, like Goldilocks to totally chopped. He loved it, though. He was like, oh my God, I love it. He got used to actually being mistaken for a girl. He had no problem with that. He kind of embraced that after a while. He's like, yeah, I'm a boy, but it's all good. It's good, because they would say, oh, you're girls. They're so cute and strong. It's like, yeah, I'm a boy, but it's okay, it's cool. But it was funny because he actually used to tell me the girls liked his long hair. He was like, it's okay, the boys bully me and they kind of make fun of me, and they say, why do you have girl hair? Why is your hair so long? It's like a girl. He's learned about like gender roles and non-conforming and all that stuff at a very early age, because at 7 he would say, that's fine, you don't have to like it. I don't really care if you like it. The girls like it. I'm like, good job. But stick with that. Just go against the norm and do whatever you want for whatever reason you want. It was kind of cute. So it's chopped. It's no longer this long, but yes, it does look sort of female in general, right, based on gender sort of norms. Hair actually has 3 layers of keratinized cells. Okay, so it's got these layers of cells. And actually, it was Natalie Cotton who took this beautiful hair follicle picture. By the way, you guys have lots of tissue pictures now, histology pictures. Send me some of your favorites, okay? Because I put them in lectures, and I also, on our quizzes and our exams and stuff, you might actually recognize your own image if you send me some images. I like them, I love them, they're beautiful, and you guys do a great job at them. So the hair parts we actually have are the medulla, the cortex, and the cuticle. Okay, so not the epidendrum or the cuticle of the nail, but actually this is the surrounding waxy layer around the hair shaft itself. Now I'll give you a little hint, anytime in anatomy, when you see medulla and you see cortex, those mean very specific things. Someone that is familiar with the Latin word roots and things we've talked about in the glossary, what would be the medulla? What does that mean? Medulla. So if we look at the hair, it's kind of like this. It's got this outer part, it's got this inner part, it's got this sort of center part here, this core. Medulla means center or middle. Okay, this is the middle of the hair. The medulla, I'll just put N, is the very core part of the hair, the dead hair cells. Okay? The cortex is outside of that, so it's the layer around that. Cortical or cortex in Latin means around the edge, the circumference, the outer part. So when we look at different organs in the body, the kidneys, the spleen, the pancreas, the brain, all these areas, there's a cortex and there's a medulla. Okay, there's a core part and there's an outer part. And then this outer range here, this waxy sort of protective layer, this is the actual cuticle. Okay, so medulla, cuticle are right there. Anytime you see medulla, it means in the middle, center. Anytime you see cortex, it means around the edge or the circumference. So the hair itself, the hair follicles actually extend from the epidermis and they go all the way down from the epidermis down into the dermis. Really far, oftentimes going almost to the hypodermis, okay? You have a hair bulb, that's the deep expanded end of the hair follicle. And then the root plexus, there's this knot, it's hard to see, but there's this little sensory nerve endings that are wrapped all the way around the bulb at the end, okay, the hair bulb, the hair follicle at the base. Those sensory nerve endings are there so they detect movement, pull, stretch, movement of the actual hair follicle. Okay, so that sends information to your brain on position of the hair follicles, or hair being pulled, or stuck, or caught, right? That gives sensory information to your brain. So if we look at this in cross-section, this is a cross-section of the hair. The hair itself, so this is the follicular cells that surround it and support the growing hair, and here's the actual hair itself. Okay, the cuticle on the outside, the cortex right around it, and then this little core right here. What's right in the middle? The medulla. So that's the medulla of the actual hair shaft. If we look at it here, that's the cartoon. This is the actual histology picture of it. Okay, so we can actually see a little cuticle, waxy outer layer, cortex, and little spots of the dead keratinized cells right in the center of the medulla. And if you look at the base of the follicle, it's right here. So we have the hair matrix, the cells right at the base, the hair papilla, and then at the base of this, notice these little brownish cells right here that have color. Take a guess what you think those little colored cells are at the base of this hair bulb here, the base of the hair bulb. Melanocytes. These are the melanocytes that make, what do they make? Melanin. That gets packaged into the cells, so it gives hair cells that are in the hair shaft different colors based on different amounts and type of melanin. Okay, so it can give color to the actual hair itself. And interestingly enough, down here in this hair papilla and this base of the hair follicle, stem cells actually come in here and can replace up in here and give rise to new dividing cells that are making more cells that make up the hair shaft. Okay? So you have stem cells that are kind of hovering around here, migrate in to this hair papilla and give rise to new cells. So that your hair cells making up the shafts can keep being produced. They can keep being made. And actually they go through cycles of growth. This hair shaft is now dead, packed with keratin, packed with melanin, and it will shed. It'll actually come out, right? There's cycles of growth. Well, it'll shed out of the follicle completely, and then in the papilla, in the base of the follicle, stem cells will come in, regenerate, make more through mitosis, more cells, and then that new hair will start to be created and then come out of the actual follicle. All right, well, we'll talk about that more in a little bit, implications for that. I usually get questions on the hair follicle before I get into this little structure. This is a really cool guy. But the hair, I've gotten questions like this, and no one's asking it, so I'm just going to ask it. I'm just going to say it. Is there a difference between waxing and shaving? You might not think this has to do with anatomy and physiology, but it does. Yes, there's a difference. What is the difference?
They pull out the hair.
In which one?
In waxing.
Okay, so waxing, there's wax, hot wax, like beeswax, right? All hot. Put it on there, let it harden, let it dry, and then put a piece of tape over the top. Have you guys ever done this? Raise your hand if you've done this. It's a lot of fun. It's like my favorite thing in the world. Don't hate it. It's absolutely horrible. All those sensory receptors are all stimulated, all the pain and sensory receptors, and they rip it off. So the hair shafts actually get ripped out completely from the base of the follicle. So down in the bottom now, they're empty follicles. Okay, so it's very smooth. There's no hair. It's all gone. When you shave, what are you doing? When you're actually using a razor or shaving the hair? Right, you're just cutting, you're just lawn mowing off the top of the hair shaft, right? So the hair, the base of the hair, the papilla and the matrix is still dividing, still making those cells, right, and making the hair, so it continues to just grow out. So it'll grow out sooner, right, and you're not taking out the hair base, the base part of the follicle. Yes, question, Diane?
Have you done that? Because like when you shave, you're like going with the blade across your skin, and then when you wax, you're like ripping it out from the whole body. So are you gonna lose that?
Well, ultimately what I can say is waxing, actually, you're right, it takes it out from the root, right, from the base of the follicle. It rips it out. Takes longer for that to generate from the new little hair papilla in the matrix and make more, right? Takes more to do that. It takes longer to do that. A lot of people get less irritation and bumps and problems with some of the glands in the skin by doing the waxing. Because you're right, they're not dragging a razor blade that has bacteria and different things in it and scratching and nicking the surface layers of the skin and introducing bacteria, but it's really just wax and pulling up and ripping straight out. Also, something weird that happens, hair tends to get less thick over time with waxing, and the reason for that is the stem cell thing that we were talking about. If you're taking it out from the root, right, and there's only so many times that those stem cells can repopulate and regenerate and make a new hair shaft, you do that enough times and they can't replenish and regenerate. And so it slows down sort of the growth rate and the amount of hair that's actually coming out of the individual follicles with time. There's also laser treatment now. They can go in and laser. It's ablating those stem cells at the base of the hair follicle. So it takes a few times, but eventually they kaput, they can't do it anymore. Yeah?
So what happens when a hair in your skin just kind of doesn't grow out, you know, and then you get a little bump? What is that called?
So a lot of times we have little plugs, yes.
Just can't find the pore, or?
It's sometimes what happens when the hair is growing out, the hair shaft from the very base of the follicle, it grows out, it kind of grows in. Instead of going out, it gets hooked, and then it starts growing down the other way. That's like an ingrown hair. And it creates a plug or a bump or a pimple sort of in that area. And a lot of times you have to free it from the top for it to be able to come out. We'll also look, there's other structures that are associated with the hair follicles, and they actually produce oil. And oil sometimes builds up bacteria and creates acne or pimples. And they're right at those areas of where the follicles come out in the epidermis. One other interesting feature I will say, linked in with the dermis and attached to each hair follicle is the arrector pili muscle. Little bundle of smooth muscle on here, you can see it. It's right here, tethered to the adjacent side of the hair follicle. This makes your hair stand up when the arrector pili muscle contracts. Okay, so the arrector pili muscle contracts, and it actually makes your hair follicles, which are kind of angled, go like this. Okay, so it's a little like a little cable. It contracts and tightens, and it pulls the hair follicle up. So normally it's like this. This contracts and it goes up. So when does this actually? What does that cause? Goosebumps. Goosebumps or goose pimples, right? People say goosebumps. So usually this, and when does that happen? When do you get goosebumps? When you're cold, okay? And cold, we think about that for a second. If you're cold, you're wanting to increase a layer of fur. We don't have a lot of fur. We're not highly haired, right? But increasing and keeping body temperature in, right? And creating a buffer between you and the outside ambient conditions, right? Also, when does it happen? Does it happen emotionally at any point? When you're scared, yes, when you're scared. So that's another sort of primal feature of the arrector pili muscles in the skin. Basically, when you're scared or you have a fight or flight response, you get the goosebumps, right? And for some animals, like dogs, have you guys seen a dog or a cat when they get scared? What happens to them? Their hair, they puff up. Even my dog, she's this little, dog hopping around on 3 legs. She gets nervous and she barks at someone. Her hair, she looks like a bear. I mean, she looks scary. She's really friendly, and they're like, oh, yeah, I don't believe that for a second. She's 3 legs. She's totally innocent. Yeah, Kiara.
Why does it happen when someone's like really good at singing or something like that? Like, oh, you gave me goosebumps.
That is a good, and that happens to me. I'll see a commercial or hear someone singing. My cousin's a beautiful singer. She sings, and I'm like, oh my gosh, goosebumps. I just gave myself goosebumps just saying that. So it is an emotional response. It's tied into our nervous system. So it's tied into our central and peripheral nervous systems that we'll talk about very soon. All right, so I'm going to just go over hair, types of hair. Vellus hairs, they're on the bodies of all of us, especially women and